So with chapter 3, we're starting to set the stage for navigation and adding pages to our website. I'm not going to go over the whole thing with you, but basically the couple things that you need to know about chapter 3 is make sure you're keeping your layers organized. With my layers here, I've actually used folders, and I've put things that belong to specific pages, so like the subheading, the homepage pick, and all the different buttons are all unique to the home page. And then on the Trex page, which is on frame 5, there's the Trex info and then the Trex pick. And then the things that are common throughout the pages, like the stop actions, the main heading, which is here, the logo, and eventually the home button will be on several pages, and the background, are all kind of outside of a folder because they're used frequently. So think of navigating the timeline as a choose your own destiny kind of adventure book, because basically what you're saying is this button can jump me to whatever frame in the timeline that I want people to go to. So 5 was just an arbitrary number that the book author picked. You could have picked 10, you could have picked 100, but it makes more sense to do 5 because it's fairly close to the home page. And so it doesn't have to go in chronological order. If Cruz's page is on frame 15 and they click Cruz's first, then they're going to go jump from frame 1 to frame 15. So as you can see, if you're looking through the timeline, the gray boxes with the black dots, those are keyframes, so that means that there is content on these. So subheading, home pick, and the 3 buttons should have only content on frame 1. And then on frame 5, there's nothing on the Trex info and Trex pick layers, there's nothing until frame 5 because this is what we consider the Trex page. And then we have the stop actions, which we'll get to in a second, and the main heading, logo, and my background have lasted for 5 frames because I want them to appear on both pages. So another thing you need to be aware of is try to keep your library as organized as possible. Again, you can do layers or new layers and new folders down here just so you can kind of get everything organized the way that you'd like it. And I've also set up my stage so that I have the actions panel open, and that way it's going to be easy to add buttons. So let's go ahead and start with the buttons. What I did with this is I actually deleted my Tours and Cruises button that I made in chapter 2, and I duplicated this Trex button once I got all this button states going. So if I double click inside this button, you see the up, over, down, and hit states. And I didn't want to have to recreate that for every single button, so I deleted these 2 buttons and then just duplicated this button once I had it all ready to go, but before I added the actions, because I don't want the same actions on every single button. So let me show you how I made these 3 states. I'll go ahead and remove these frames. Basically what I did is I clicked here and I hit F6 on the keyboard, which is the same thing as going to insert timeline keyframe, because what that's going to do, it's going to take the content on the keyframe right before it and copy it. So now it's a copy. They look exactly the same, but with this copy, I can come in here and I can start changing my gradient. So if I wanted to do, let's say, red, I could do red here. And I could change this to white. And no, that doesn't look pretty at all, but it's kind of getting that point across to you. So then I can hit F6 again, and this makes a copy of the keyframe right before it. And so then it's just a matter of changing all this. So maybe I want blue buttons. So I can come here and change them to blue, like that. And then the hit state, all you need for the hit state is a shape in the same shape as the rest of your buttons. It doesn't even have to be a gradient or pretty, because it's not going to be something that's seen. It just tells us where the clickable area is. So that's basically how I created those states. So I'm going to go ahead and undo all that, and hopefully I don't freeze my program. Sometimes you got to be really careful with undoing stuff in Flash because it kind of freaks out. Alright, so let's go ahead to the home button. And what I did here is originally it's going to add 5 frames, and so I hit F7 on my keyboard, or insert timeline blank keyframe, because I know I'm going to put new artwork on frame 5. So this is the home button. So I don't want to create all that again. So I can take this Trex button, right click, duplicate it. I'm going to call this BTN home and click OK and drag it to my stage. Oops, and this layer is locked, so that causes problems. And I can align it how I want to, and now it's just a matter of, I have that home button there, but obviously it needs to say home. So I can go to each one of these and type home. And there's nothing on the hit state, so I don't have to type home for that. And that's how easy it is to duplicate your buttons. So once you get the Trex button and all of its different states down, then just right click on it and start creating the tours and the cruises and the home button from that. So the last thing we need to do, if we view this, you can see that it just keeps looping because automatically it's going to loop your movie. And so we want to add stop actions so that we're forcing people to choose what they want to do. So we're going to need 2 stop actions. We want it to stop on frame 1 because they need to choose which place they want to go. And then when they do click on Trex, it's going to come to this page and we want them to stop because we want them to be able to read it, understand it, and then they can click home when they're ready to go back to the home page. So I have a keyframe here, or a blank keyframe, waiting for content. And you can't, if I come in here and do global functions, timeline control, and stop, that's perfect. And I would lock this layers to make sure you don't have any artwork. The only time on the timeline we should see little A's should be on this stop movie layer. So that's telling me there's actions on that frame. However, it's going to affect all the other frames after it unless you have a new keyframe. So if I even click on frame 5, it's still telling us to stop. So let me go ahead and add actions to the Trex button to show you what happens if you don't add a stop action on frame 5. So for the Trex button, you don't add the go to function anywhere in the timeline. You're going to add it directly to the button because when they click the button, we want it to go to frame 5. So we're going to add it directly to the button. You can tell you're adding it if you look down in the bottom left hand corner of the actions panel. So I'll go to global functions, timeline control, go to, and I want it to go to frame 5 because that's where my Trex page is. Now, I could choose go to and play, and that's if it goes to frame 5 and then maybe there's an animation, maybe my picture fades in, then go to and play is fine. Right now we'll just do go to and stop because there's no animation on frame 5. So let's go ahead and view this video. So automatically we see it's not looping because we added a stop function on frame 5 or frame 1. And so if I click Trex, it goes to the Trex page. The problem is that I did go to and stop, so it's automatically going to stop. But let's say on this button instead I did go to and play. Now let's go ahead and see how that works. I'll click Trex and nothing happens. And it's because it's literally jumping to frame 5 and it happens so fast you can't see it. It's looping back to frame 1. So instead, we're going to go ahead and add a blank keyframe here by going to Insert, Timeline, Blank Keyframe. And now you can see there's no actions here. The actions, this stop action applies to all these frames, but as soon as there's a blank keyframe, it's asking you for a new action. So timeline control and stop. So those 2 A's are all on the same layer. Now if I go ahead and preview the movie, Trex, and it stops there, home doesn't work, so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go to the home button, click on it, global functions, timeline control, go to, and we're going to go to and play or stop, it doesn't really matter, and we want it to jump back to 1 because that's where our home page is. So let's go ahead and test this. Trex goes to the Trex page, home goes to the home page, and we have rollovers for each of these, so when we add those pages they're ready to go, and that is chapter 3.